The diplomatic cruiser, Harmony's Edge, hummed through the void between stars, carrying the most unlikely cargo the Galactic Council had ever approved. 2 human children aboard a Vrixtal warship. Danny's knelt beside her bunk in the cramped quarters she'd been assigned, smoothing the thin thermal blanket with practiced movements. At 15, she'd been making her own bed since she was 5, a habit her mother had insisted upon even when they lived in the cramped mining colony on Kepler 442b. Now, millions of light years from home, that simple routine anchored her to something familiar. She didn't notice the 6 sets of luminous eyes watching from the ventilation grate above. The Vrixtal cubs had been observing the human female for 3 solar cycles now. Their species, apex predators from a world of endless night, had evolved to hunt in coordinated packs, to study prey patterns, to learn and adapt. But they had never encountered anything quite like humans. Danny's tucked the corners with military precision, creating what her father had called hospital corners. She fluffed the single flat pillow, placed it at the head, and stepped back to admire her work. A small smile crossed her face. In the ventilation shaft, the largest cub, designated Vorketh by the ship's manifest, tilted his head. The movement the human female had just performed was purposeful, ritualistic. Among the Vrixtal, sleep nests were simply wherever one collapsed after a hunt. But this was something else. She prepares her sleeping place, Vorketh clicked softly to his clutchmates. Every rotation. The same pattern. The smallest cub, barely past her first molt, chirped curiously. Why? The sleeping platform does not move. The thermal fabric remains where it falls. Humans are strange, another whispered. Brother Micah does not do this. That much was true. The human male, younger than the female by 2 seasons, simply threw himself onto his bunk each rest cycle, sometimes not even removing his boots. The cubs had watched him too, fascinated by his casual disregard for the sleeping area. But Danny's was different. Over the next few rotations, the cubs continued their surveillance. They watched as Danny's taught the ritual to her brother during one of their rare shared meals in the communal area. You need to at least try to keep your space clean, Micah, Danny's said, demonstrating the corner tuck technique on his rumpled blanket. It's about discipline, self-respect. 12-year-old Micah rolled his eyes but paid attention. We're on an alien warship heading into a potential combat zone, and you're worried about hospital corners? Especially here, Danny's replied firmly. Dad always said, control what you can control. We can't control where we are or where we're going, but we can control this. She pulled the fabric taut, showing him the precise angle. Micah tried to mimic her movements, fumbling slightly with the corners. In the shadows, Vorketh made a decision. The next rest cycle, when Danny's entered her quarters, she froze. Her bed was made. Perfectly. Every corner tucked with mechanical precision, the pillow centered exactly as she always placed it. Her hand went to the small blade she kept strapped to her thigh, a gift from the Vrixtal commander after she'd helped diagnose a critical malfunction in their life support systems. Someone had been in her room. Hello? She called out. The universal translator on her collar hummed softly. A scraping sound came from above. The ventilation grate swung open, and 6 Vrixtal cubs dropped to the floor with surprising grace for creatures that massed nearly 50 kilograms each. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed under the low red lighting they preferred. Danny's tensed but didn't reach for her blade. She'd learned enough about Vrixtal body language to recognize curiosity rather than aggression. Vorketh stepped forward, his mandibles clicking in what the translator rendered as, "Did we perform the ritual correctly?" Danny's blinked. Then she started to laugh, a sound that made all 6 cubs tilt their heads in unison. "You made my bed." We observed. We learned. We replicated. Vorketh's eyes swirled with colors she'd learned indicated uncertainty. This is incorrect? No, Danny said, her smile widening. No, this is perfect. You did it perfectly. The cubs' chittering filled the room, a sound of pure joy that the translator struggled to render into words. From that rotation forward, everything changed. The cubs began making their own sleeping nests, copying Danny's technique. They timed themselves, turning the simple task into competition. The ventilation shafts echoed with their excited clicks as they raced to see who could tuck their thermal padding fastest while maintaining the proper corner angles. Micah discovered them one evening in the cargo bay, 6 juvenile apex predators arranged in a row, frantically tucking blankets. "What the—" he started. "Competition," the smallest cub announced proudly. "Vorketh is fastest, but I have cleanest corners. Danny says both matter." Micah found his sister in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Your weird bed-making thing has infected the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy," he said. Danny's grinned. "They're not dangerous. They're just kids. Kids with acid saliva and claws that can shred titanium. Still kids." She turned to face him. "They watch us, Micah. They're trying to understand what makes us human. And you know what they chose to imitate? Not our weapons technology, not our mathematics. They chose care. The act of making something better than you found it, even if it's just a bed." 3 weeks later, when the Harmony's Edge arrived at the disputed border zone, the Vrixtal commander summoned both human children to the bridge. Through the view screen, they could see the opposing fleet, hundreds of ships from a dozen species, all armed, all waiting. "The Cubs have made a request," Commander Threxval said, his deep voice resonating through the translator. "They wish to demonstrate something to the Council delegates before negotiations begin." On every ship in both fleets, view screens flickered to life. And there, broadcast across the entire diplomatic channel, were 6 Vrixtal cubs making their beds. They tucked corners with fierce concentration. They smoothed wrinkles with careful claws. They arranged their pillows precisely. And when they finished, they turned to face the cameras. "We learned this from human Danny's," Vorketh announced. "She taught us that peace begins in small spaces, that order can be chosen, that care is not weakness." The smallest cub stepped forward. "If we can learn human ways, humans can learn ours. If predator cubs can make beds, perhaps we can make peace." The transmission ended. For a long moment, silence filled every ship in the gathered fleets. Then, slowly, one ship powered down its weapons. Then another. Then another. Danny's felt tears on her cheeks. Micah gripped her hand. "I still think you're weird about bed-making," he whispered. "Shut up," she whispered back, smiling through her tears. In the end, it wasn't advanced weaponry or brilliant diplomacy that prevented the war. It was 6 predator cubs racing to tuck themselves in, competing to see who could best honor a simple human ritual of care. Sometimes the smallest gestures cast the longest shadows across the stars. And sometimes the most human thing you can do is show others that everyone, even apex predators, can learn to make their beds.